In this interview for Break the Mould with Anwyn, I chat with Hayley West, who is an independent death worker and end of life consultant. And she also has a program on Main FM called Dead Air. And I love her catch line, which is talking about death won't kill you. And so we talk about love, death, and dying, anything to do with relationships and death, but also grief. And grief can come in many forms. It's not only the death of somebody, but it can be the loss of a relationship or the end of something that's happened. And so it's really interesting what we talk about, because relationships, of course, there's many forms of relationships. So there's closest ones can be our parents, and then our partners and children, and she also talks about her sibling. So yeah, there's many relationships that can be involved, and so I think you'll find it really interesting. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you get a lot out of it.
Yeah, I had to kind of check myself about what I was feeling a little bit jealous. And I wasn't jealous of the other women in his life. I was more jealous of.
I'm delighted to have Hayley West on Break the Mold with Anwyn, and she is a independent death worker and end of life consultant.
Yes,
Welcome.
thank you. Thanks for having me, Anwyn.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about how you got into this field.
Well, I've experienced a lot of death in my life since I was a young child. And I had a sister who died when she was 3, and I was 6, and that was the first death I experienced. And then I think I worked out the other day when I was writing something for the Death Letter Project that I have had 7 significant deaths in my life so far. And that was before the age of 40, actually. And I'm
Jesus.
50 something now. So but my family was very much death denial family. So when
Mm.
my sister died, her photograph was taken out of the house, and
Oh, wow.
like any photographs and any toys, anything taken away, and
Oh.
she was never spoken of again.
Mm.
So as each death happened after that, the same thing occurred, and as I I'm an artist as well, and I studied sculpture at RMIT. And around that time in the 90s, mid 90s, my father died, and I had started to see death kind of creeping into my art practice a little bit. Um, and actually, that was the first time I went to grief counseling when he died, and I was in my 20s. And that was actually when the death of my sister kind of resurfaced for me, and
Yeah.
I um, yeah, relived everything because I was there when she died.
Mm.
Um, but it wasn't it, when I moved from Melbourne to Darwin, and I lived in Darwin for 8 years, mm, in the early 2000s. And yeah, I started noticing that death was really present in my work. That was after my father had died, and then my mother died when I was in Darwin. And
Oh, so your father died first.
yes, yes. And about nearly 10 years later, my mum died. And then we left Darwin and moved to the Blue Mountains, and it was really hard to find work. And so I decided to do my master's in visual arts by research. And that's when I started researching really hard into the whole death industry. And that's also where I came across Death Cafe for the first time. And that was in 2012, 11 or 12. And I went to my first Death Cafe out of curiosity and kind of for my research for my master's. And it was like I had this huge epiphany. It was so amazing that I came across a bunch of people that wanted to talk about death and dying. And for me, it yeah, it was incredible. And I became really good friends with Kerry Noonan, who's a really important deathy in the death space. And I ended up running Death Cafés with her in the Blue Mountains before I moved to Castlemaine.
Right.
But I ended up co-hosting Death Cafés for 10 years nearly. Um,
Wow. And so tell us about that. What happens there?
so Death Cafe, it's something that was created in the UK
Mm.
from a model that came from Switzerland, Cafe Mortel. So it's a concept, it's an international movement. It's a concept whereby, particularly in Western countries where we don't talk about death and dying so much, it's to really open up the conversation and get people talking. And so it's a facilitated conversation for 2 hours. So the subject could change each time depending on who comes to the group. So it's not for profit. It's free. You should always have food and nourishment
Yeah.
at it, and it's not a space to spruik your wares. So funeral directors could come, but you can't kind of spruik what
Yeah.
you're doing. And it's a confidential space. And what else? There's a few guidelines. So there's
Mm.
HQ, deathcafe.com, where you register that you're going to run a death cafe, and there's guidelines that you need
Okay.
to follow. So it's not a counselling session. So
Yes.
I would be one of the facilitators. And so you introduce yourself, and while you're there for the first hour, if you want to, you can also just sit and listen. And then in the second hour, you just pick up on conversation from what was brought up in the group. So it depends who comes. Sometimes we had a lot of nurses that came, and so it would be a more medicalized conversation.
Yeah.
And then other times we had, some young people would come and their friends thought they were morbid because they didn't want to talk about their friend that died by suicide. Or, we used to have this older couple that came, here in Castlemaine, uh, who used to love to come and brag about the fact that they'd done all their paperwork, but their family didn't want to hear about it. So,
Oh.
yeah. And then on the other end,
Mm.
were, there's a lot of people that come to try and get some tips about how to talk to their elderly parents about death and dying and how to get them prepared and how
Yes.
how to broach the subject to do their paperwork and that kind of thing. So yeah, it was really they're really great, and they've just started up in Malden now. Somebody else is running them in Malden, which is fantastic. It's so
Mm.
nice to not be the only deathy in the village. And
Oh.
then Jill is also running Good Grief lounges once a month at the Northern Arts Hotel, and that's a similar kind of idea, but she gets speakers to come. So it's not a death
Ah.
cafe. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, yeah.
Well,
So
that's
that's
a
a
good
death cafe.
resource, isn't it?
Yes, yes, yes. It's got a lawyer to come and speak about
Oh,
the
yeah.
will.
Great. Yeah.
And I've just put her in contact with somebody who's in Castlemaine who's starting to make coffins. Yeah,
Ah.
yeah.
Like timber.
Yeah, although he's very interested in hand woven coffins and did a workshop a couple of weekends ago in Melbourne with hand woven coffins. So,
Right.
mm.
And I heard on your show today you were talking about somebody who is it weaves noxious weeds?
She's the only coffin weaver in Australia. And there's no real tradition in Australia of weaving coffins like there is in European countries and in Indonesia, actually. Uh, so she weaves them out of cat's claw vine, and she herself rips them off the trees in the bushland around her area. She's a
Oh,
basket weaver, but she's decided that she needs to eradicate this vine. So she wants to try and get rid of it in her region, which is a massive task. But
fantastic.
off thinking that she would weave the coffins and sell the coffins. But then she soon realized that people wanted to get together as a group and weave them together for somebody in particular who was dying or had died. So she's from Mullumbimby, New South Wales. Zimmy Forrest is her name, and she has a company called Divine Creations. And so she came down to do a workshop in Melbourne over the Mother's Day weekend, and she had 19 people come, and they wove a coffin she brought all the materials down. They wove the coffin and
How did they allow that over the border? Oh, she drove.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But I think once, yeah, I'm not sure about that actually. Um, I did ask her why she wouldn't get a weed here, and but her main purpose is to eradicate it from her bushland. Yeah, so she wants
great concept.
Yeah, so she did a workshop in Melbourne, and she had 19 people come, and somebody in the group bought the coffin at the end of it for themselves.
Wow.
And meanwhile, she had a spare one that she'd already 99% finished at home. And I said, well, I'll buy one off you.
Yeah.
And so she came over here on last Friday, and I got a few people together, and we finished off weaving the lip on the lid, and also started putting the calico insert inside. But we did the ropes and the toggles and everything. And it's so beautiful, and it's kind of like a show piece to have just all the time in the back of my hearse. But I'm open to somebody who wants to buy it if they want to be burnt or buried in it. But I don't know how many hours all up it takes to make one of those coffins. It would be a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not something.
It could be part of the process of grieving, like for your relative.
Yes.
To weave it with them.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, it comes, I've noticed over the last few years too that when cardboard coffins and just simple pine coffins have become really popular because families really like to draw on them, and especially kids.
Yes.
And I think that's part of that grief process too. And particularly, I mean, I've seen people do it with shrouds too, when somebody's just having a shroud burial. The shroud gets laid out and people draw on the shroud too. So I think it's a really beautiful process to go through that grieving together as well, and to be talking about the person who's died.
Yes, while you're doing it.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful. And it's something that has become popular also at a living wake. So rather than doing it at a funeral or prior to a funeral, the person who's dying potentially has accessed voluntary assisted dying, and they've set a date.
Yeah.
And then they've decided to have a living wake, and it's because they want to attend the party.
Yes. Yeah.
So making a woven coffin or drawing on a pine coffin can be part of that party.
Yes. I
was thinking celebration.
That show Fisk.
Yes.
They did that on the last show.
Yeah. So
her dad.
Yeah, and it's beautiful because you can be part of that as well, and be part of that process. I mean, somebody recently in Newstead had his own living wake, and he had Rotary doing a sausage sizzle and face painting for the kids, and it was a big celebration of his life. And I think
it's kind of like my mum. She said she wanted a clown at her funeral.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I asked a clown here, and he said, "Oh no, I'm not doing that." And so he said, "Oh, I'm happy to go and do it now while she's alive." And so we did that. We said, "Okay, what about you have it now, and you get to enjoy it, and then everyone else can too."
Yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, I kind of like the idea of having a clown for all the kids at a funeral. Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, and I want to be dressed in a clown costume."
She sounds great.
But and also her viewing was on Halloween because she was born on Halloween. She just managed to work out the dates.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's so
because
many.
she actually chose her moment. She said, I'm going to go to heaven tonight. So,
And she did.
well, no, the nurse said to her, oh, wait till tomorrow. And so she did because she's very compliant. But it was really beautiful because she had her favorite carer there and she basically died in her arms and she was just like bawling her eyes out telling us this story. But yeah, she was with her favorite person. So it
Oh,
was really beautiful. Yeah.
fantastic. I think I hear often stories about, people on their deathbed and family around and
Yeah.
waiting for somebody to die. And it's not until actually the family leaves the space that the person decides, okay, I can go now. Like, whether that be because they don't want them to be there when they die because they're scared of how it might look and the
Yeah.
fear factor involved, or whether it's just like, oh, thank God they've left the room. Now let me go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Letting go. Yeah.
Mm.
So
Mm.
yeah, it must have been really difficult as a child not to be able to express that grief and you had no counseling, nobody gave you anything. And you were so little yourself. Like your sister was 3, was it? And
And I was 6. Yeah. My
6.
brother was 5.
And that's really crucial, that age, like 6 and 5.
Mm.
And so how do you think that impacted you?
I think for me, it meant that what I remember is I always had to be careful around my mum.
Yeah.
Don't upset your mother was always about that. And the only recognition of Amelia, my sister that died,
Yeah.
was on her birthday every year.
Oh, okay.
And my dad would say to us kids, today, especially, don't upset your mother.
Oh, I see that way. Yes.
Pretty much it.
Okay.
And yeah, it was fairly complicated kind of situation. It was actually my brother's birthday that she died on,
Oh
and
my God. So
it
that
was
adds
his
another
birth.
level. Mm.
It was his birthday party at a friend's place, and she drowned in the swimming pool of at a friend's place.
Mm.
And it was interesting when one of my relatives died. I think my nana died, and I went with my brother to Springvale Cemetery with a few. I think we went to we went to the interment. We've got a family kind of cremated
Oh,
ashes spot.
yeah.
We were looking at all the plaques because there's no room left now.
Yeah.
Not that I want to be cremated, but we're looking at them, and he looked at Amelia's plaque, and this is, we were in our 40s, I think, when Nana died, and he said, "Oh my God, did Amelia die on my birthday?" Like,
Oh,
don't you remember that?
wow.
Yeah, and it was his birthday party.
Oh,
Um, wow.
gee.
So it was like
Yeah, so that was blocked out.
totally, yeah,
Yeah.
it just incredible. Like
Because it's
how,
something you're supposed to be celebrating, and then now it's not a celebration. And so it's probably good that he didn't connect it then,
yeah,
because then he wouldn't have been able to enjoy his birthday ever.
yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, maybe there was a
That's
method
like a
behind.
survival thing.
Oh, I think so too. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, as I said, when I had repressed what had happened, and wasn't presented to me, uh, a remembrance of how it all occurred until I was, having grief counseling when my father died. He died of pancreatic cancer,
Right.
and I was really close to my father. Like
Okay.
that's why I went to grief counseling. And I was an adult, in my 20s. I knew that I needed some help. And then, yeah, like I was actually in the pool when she died, and my mum had gone
Oh,
off to the toilet and said, "Can you just watch your sister?" And of course, I was 6 years old and
oh,
didn't. And
yeah.
she drowned. And actually, the visuals of her at the bottom of the pool came
Oh,
back to me, and I knew
yeah.
exactly what she was wearing. Hot pink bathers, hot pink nail polish. I saw it all came back to me, and the whole event. What happened next? The CPR,
Mm,
all the kids getting taken away together.
yeah.
I remember, mum being beside herself and, all that, it came back to me. So yeah, that was quite intense. Quite intense.
So did you carry some guilt about that? Because
Yeah, I did.
your
Yep.
mother said to you, take care of your sister.
Yep. Yep, I
And so
did.
then you would have put it on yourself.
Yeah, and thankfully I was already in a situation where I could talk about that.
Mm.
And so I did have, I mean, my first counselor I didn't really like at all. And I ended up finding another one who was male actually, and he had a dog. And it was like I kind of needed that father figure
Right.
to be my grief counselor at that time. And so I'd already kind of acknowledged the death of my sister at that point as well, and was going through all that guilt of it too. And of course mum was still alive at this point, but still, like, I couldn't talk to mum about it. Like the relationship I had with her was still, don't upset your mother. So yeah, I carried that guilt, and I'd still think about it sometimes. And if, later on, I oh no, it was previous to Dad dying. I actually had this experience where I almost drowned
Oh,
in the
yeah,
ocean.
at the beach or something.
Yeah. And I was in New South Wales, and yeah, my boyfriend was on the waving to me as I had my arm up. Like, now you have to like put your fist like this when you're drowning.
Oh, is that what you do?
Yes, not like this. Um, but
Oh,
that's
so the
the
fist means
reason.
you're drowning.
Yeah, you're not just
Oh,
waving at somebody. Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
okay.
But so yeah, surfer came and saved me. But
Wow.
um, I saw my sister in the ocean. Yeah, and I would have been like 21 or something at that point, and it was
Do you
like,
think she was there in spirit?
yeah, I guess so. But um, I think, it was probably, this was pre-Dad dying too. But I think I remembered this later when I was in grief counseling too. It's like, oh, I'm sure she came, and remember seeing her underwater. Like, so it was
Mm.
trying to connect the pool incident and the ocean incident. Yeah, I don't know. I think that kind of grief, yeah, it just moves in such strange ways, and
Yes, so true. Yeah.
not linear.
No, no.
Yeah. So, I guess, yeah, I don't feel guilt about her death at all now, because I have a
No.
greater
You're an
understanding.
adult. Yeah.
And I have a greater understanding about how
Mm.
tragedy happens, and yeah, how to deal with grief, I guess, in a way. Mm.
And so how did your mother die?
She died of cancer too.
All
And she
right.
had leukemia when I was a child, and she got through that. And she was in remission for a long time. And then she got ovarian cancer. And then it moved to her liver, and that was pretty much it for her. Yeah. See her a couple of times. And I tried to talk to her about what was happening, and she just did not want to talk about it.
Mm.
Like, I've got this one photograph of her in the hospital, and there's this really kind of semi-deflated smiley face balloon. And
Oh,
I,
yeah, I know what you mean.
yeah, and it's
The helium balloon that's gone wrong.
yeah, and I kind of remember that time because my uncle is in the photo too, and he's the only elder left in my family in Australia. And yeah, I remember us trying to talk to her about, what about all your stuff, and you
Oh.
uh, have you thought, just different questions, and she just did not want to talk about it. Yeah, it's interesting the way that I've dealt with different deaths. I mean, I also had a young uncle who died when he was 21, and he just
Oh.
immigrated to Australia. That was the second significant death, and he was the favorite uncle. He was only 21. I was
Yeah.
young, and he died driving on Christmas Eve.
Oh.
He just immigrated. It's curious how my family dealt with death. Like, they ended up being a big falling out with them. And I remember, the only thing I remember about Peter, my uncle dying at that time was all our Christmas presents from the grandparents got taken back, and I
Huh?
never knew why.
Why?
There was some blame going on for Peter dying with my father, even
Oh,
though he wasn't involved. It was, yeah, all these kind of family things that went on. Every family's got
secrets.
weirdness. Yeah. And you know what? When I
So did
kind
you ever find out what that was about?
No, and apparently there's a letter somewhere that my
Oh,
father wrote to his parents, or to the parents, his parents wrote to him. I can't remember exactly. But you know, I kind of think about this, my family and the way that they deal or dealt with death sometimes. And part of my heritage is Yenish, Gypsy.
oh,
So 2 generations back, um, my family moved from Switzerland to England. And Yenish gypsies are the Swiss gypsies who have their own stolen generation, actually. They're known
oh,
as the
really?
blonde gypsies. And
Oh,
they're not part of the Romany group. They're like an Irish traveller. But there's a whole stack of, taboo things in that culture. And it's a bit like I kind of came across this when I was living in Darwin when somebody Indigenous dies and photographs are taken out of photo albums and you don't speak their name, and
that's right.
particularly
Yes.
up north,
Yes. Yeah.
in the Northern Territory.
I have an Indigenous brother and sister. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. So it kind of made me think about my own family and heritage, and also because they're gypsies, nobody wanted to talk about them.
Oh, right. They
I also
disowned
had
them.
that. Yeah, it was like, oh, don't talk about the gypsies.
All right.
Being in London, I was over for a Australia Council residency, and I was trying to ask my auntie questions about our Yenish heritage, and she just would not give anything to me. It was like a shame. But so I try and find little snippets of information just from other people's families in that culture. And there's a little bit of that goes on. It's like, yeah, you don't talk about people who died. It's like,
Mm.
it's taboo, like culturally. So I try
Mm.
and I try not to give my family too much, um, you know, uh, I try not to diss them too much because even though yeah, I find it very English
Yeah.
that you don't speak about people when they've died, or you don't dwell on death. I think there might be a little bit of that hanging on of that cultural influence. I mean, when people came to England, and also when my parents both moved to Australia, it was all about being in a new place. And we had a garage sale, I remember, as kids nearly every month, because it was getting rid of old stuff. And always dad was, the
Oh,
first person on the street to have a color TV and a VCR. And
right.
it was always about new stuff, like nothing
Mm.
historical, nothing new, nothing old. Like it was all about being new.
Interesting. My
So
parents were the opposite.
yeah,
They
right.
were hoarders.
Yeah.
I had to sort all their stuff when they died.
Oh, man. Yeah. Well, I still carry around because my brother and sister and my brother lived in Vietnam for a long time. My sister has only just come back to Australia after living in Belize. She's been away for 30 years. Um, I ended up with stuff.
Yeah.
I've still got the photo albums,
Oh,
and
good. Yeah, they are
yeah,
on
but
video.
there's a lot of stuff that as I've just discarded. I'm not sentimental either.
Were your parents still alive when you had your children?
No.
None of them met your parents. Okay,
My grandmother met Ramona
really?
when she was a baby, but that
Okay.
was it. Yeah, so yeah, I didn't. And when I was living in Darwin, when I had her, I didn't have any relatives up there to help.
Mm.
Hmm. Yeah.
Wow. You're very independent.
Yes.
So you've obviously talked about uh, your parents and your sister
Mm,
and all of that and about death.
mm.
And what do
Yeah.
you think their relationship with death is like?
My daughter,
Yeah.
yeah, I was a step parent
How
too.
many children do you have?
So I was a step parent for 13 years.
Oh, okay.
And as soon as I got pregnant, I thought, oh my God, what have I done? Like, I'm going to be doing this by myself. I realized,
Right.
yeah, so that was a really, really difficult when I was
Hmm.
pregnant. I think in the second trimester, I was going
And
through
this was in the
in
Northern
Darwin.
Territory. Yeah.
Mm, mentally, I was not quite um, coping. And then we decided to move, and then she was born, and that was great. But then we decided to move to the Blue Mountains. which,
Oh,
um, my stepdaughter and her mother also came to the Blue Mountains too, because we wanted to keep, it was important for us to keep the daughters together, the sisters,
yeah.
which was great. But Blue Mountains, we only survived 3 years there. That was a terrible time for all of us, and so different from Darwin. Um, it didn't have the same community feel that we all
Oh,
missed from
okay.
Darwin, and really hard to find work. And that's when I decided to do my master's and get a scholarship to feed the family. Um, but I also struggled there because it was really hard to make friends, and I didn't know anyone in New South Wales, even though the other two parents did. They were born in Sydney, but
Ah.
they they struggled too, and then we had more deaths. Like my mother-in-law died, and then we had to
Oh.
try and then my brother-in-law died by suicide.
Oh no.
And then my father-in-law moved in with us, which was just diabolical.
You've
And
got a small child. How
I've got a
old was
small child. Ramona was, 2 when we moved,
2?
18 months old. And
That's a tricky time.
oh God, it was really difficult. And I was drinking a lot at that point. And anyway, in the end, we said, you know what, this isn't working. Let's
Mm.
move again. And we're like,
Oh.
where are we going to move? I'm like, right, let's move to Castlemaine because I have some old friends there.
Oh, okay.
And my brother is in Melbourne. At least I have some kind of family who are very
Yes.
close to my brother. And then he proceeded to move to Vietnam. But anyway, um, yeah, so we moved to Castlemaine, and actually it reminded us a lot of Darwin, and we all found our groove here. We
Yeah.
loved it. We still
Mm.
do. We're all still here.
Arty people and
Yeah, but then
creatives.
then I ended up leaving my husband because I was suddenly in this community where I felt supported, and there were
Yes.
a lot of other
Yeah.
single mothers, and I just took that opportunity, and it was bad. It was really bad, and I lost almost 20 kilograms from stress,
Oh,
and then I had nothing, so I had to start again. Um, you know,
wow.
yeah,
You've got a lot of resilience.
I totally have. I was explaining all this to a friend recently, and then as I was sort of done it in a summary, which I
Yeah.
probably am here as well. And it's like, geez, yeah, so much has happened.
They're all grief,
Oh,
leaving your home, your partner, they're all forms of grief, aren't they?
oh, totally. That separation was something I knew had to happen, and it should have happened when I was in the mountains, but I
Mm.
just didn't have the support. I thought I was stuck, and it's
Yes.
really
Yes.
hard to move from that. And um, I'm really thankful that I had the the opportunity mentally to be able to do it here. But the grief from that was probably worse than the actual deaths that I'd experienced because I'd had this gradual kind of getting used to death through my life. But I'd never experienced that kind of abandonment from somebody I
Yeah.
loved, but me
Mm.
having to leave it physically.
That must have
Quite,
been a really hard decision to make.
oh, it was so hard.
Mm.
And just, the, the, the the struggle financially and everything that happened after that. And luckily I have a good work ethic and can, find work and am always quite involved in community. Yeah, so I've been able to be resilient that way because I can apply myself to anything really. But yeah, that was quite intense grief. Yeah, and it's taken. I think it took a long time to get over that, and because it was a monogamous relationship too.
Yeah.
At that point, it was he was unfaithful to me. That really, really rocked me, and I think coming out of that, it took about 3 years post separation and 3 or maybe even longer, 3 or 4 years to kind of really think about moving into a relationship again with somebody. And then I decided to choose the non-monogamous path.
Yeah.
And kind of coming to that realization of not, and I think it comes from that grief of relying so much and being
relying on someone. Okay, yeah.
Dependent on somebody.
Yeah.
And I think I'd already learned that through my family of not relying on people to be around.
Yeah. So if they're not around, then it's your choice.
It's my choice, and I'm
rather
taking
than
control.
them choosing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that was a big, big factor in where I sit now in my romantic relationships. Has a lot to do with my experience from my marriage and from all the death in my family as well. Yeah. And my God, it's huge. It's a huge it's another epiphany for me, really.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, this is the person I am. I mean, I'm in my 50s now too, so I have that luxury of not having the raging hormones saying I need a child. My child is 15 now, so I also have that more independence now. Like that was a big thing for me too, my relationship with my daughter, not having her rely on me too. That was a big turning point for me in exploring myself again as an individual, and separating myself from my daughter. Not that I really was very reliant on her for the emotional kind of needs, but I mean, I often think about, do I kind of sometimes, I don't know if regret is the right word, but I sometimes feel like my life might have been very different if I didn't have a child, if I'd chosen not to have a child. I don't regret having a child, but it's something that people don't
They
talk
enrich our
about.
lives.
Yeah. I mean, it's, she's great, and she's so far as a teenager, she's awesome. But I kind of think, well, I could have now. I think I could have not had a child too. Like, I don't feel like I was born to be a mother. But I also don't want to be her best friend, like.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
not,
yeah.
yeah. So
it's interesting. We found this note that my daughter had written to me after an event that took place where she was a bit wild, where she raced off. And anyway, she wrote this thing to mum and dad, like, remember when you were a child? She was actually very clearly, she thought about it quite clearly. It was really interesting to look back on it because it was, I don't know, like 15 years ago that she wrote it.
yeah, wow.
Yeah. And so I think that it's good. It's kind of like a little tap on our shoulder to just sort of make sure, we don't forget that too, like that was what we did too.
Yeah. Yep. I was a very good child.
Oh, were you? Oh,
Yeah. I didn't have sex until I was 18, and I was
okay.
a straight A student. I was wild in primary school.
Yeah.
And then yeah, like I was really wild and getting in trouble and running away. And then my parents decided to separate me from all my friends and send me
Ah.
to a different school, high school to them. Then I kind of just, it was like a switch, and then I became a straight A student.
And so what's important in a relationship for you now?
Um,
Whenever you have a relationship with
yeah,
people, I mean, intimate relationships.
yeah. I think I need to be independent, completely
Yep.
independent and free, and feel free, and
Okay.
not have somebody who relies on me and I rely on them. So during the
Mm.
lockdowns and just before COVID struck, I met somebody on a dating app, and then for the next 2 years was great because he was in Melbourne, and he could come here on weekends and I could go there on weekends. And it kind of was really fun. But I also had to give up another lover because you're only allowed to have one.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And so I found myself becoming, being in this monogamous situation again. And
Mm.
he loved it. And I got to a point where we were coming out of lockdown, and I was like, I miss my friends and I miss the freedom, and he was devastated and hasn't talked to me since. And I probably
So he
broke
would have
that.
preferred it to be monogamous.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I mean, when we got into that relationship, he knew I was already seeing somebody else.
Yeah.
But that was his first relationship outside of his divorce. So he'd been
True.
married for 20 something years, and he was a good Greek boy. So, it was different for him. But I think I broke up with him in a really bad way. And I think it was me coming to this kind of like desperation of, oh my God, I've been through a marriage, I've been through that, and I feel myself getting stuck again. And the anxiety levels were rising. So, since then, I've really needed to make it very clear that this, there is, I'm quite happy to go day by day with a relationship. If the other person uh, decides that they can't include me in their life anymore for whatever reason, their new partner doesn't like the non-monogamous kind of situation, then I need to be okay with that, and they need to be okay with that, because I'm open to anything that can happen. But one of the most important things for me is to be very clear and um, and and not constrain the other person. Like neither of us should constrain the other person from what they want to do. And
Yeah.
I
So
think,
independence and freedom.
yeah, that's
Um,
very important to me. And
and does it sound like variety? Do you
yeah,
like
yes, yeah,
variety?
definitely.
So
Um,
a bit of adventure.
yeah, that's right. It's like life's short, like,
Mm.
and I really love sex. And especially when I was perimenopausal, I was just absolutely on fire. I was having the best time on the dating apps,
Yeah.
and I was having a great time. It was awesome. It's kind of slowed down a little bit now. I'm kind of coming through the other side of menopause now, which is thankfully. I mean, it's still a wild ride. So I met George recently, and hilariously, we met on Instagram because we were both reading the same book. So the dating apps I've found a little bit, uh, they're just not working for me. It's hard living in a country town and dating, actually. I don't date in my own town.
No,
That's the thing I decided I wouldn't do. And I think that's
that's
a
a good thing to
hangover.
decide. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a hangover from my ex-husband
Yeah.
and that
But
situation.
and that is a little thing about this town too.
Yeah, it's a small
There's a lot of
town.
mixing and matching going on.
There is, and like I always joke, I don't want anybody's sloppy seconds. Um, but yeah, and it's also like I don't want to, if somebody is being dishonest with me about what's happening in their relationship, I don't want
Find that
another
out.
woman to feel the way that I felt if they find out that I'm the person that their partner's seeing or something. I just don't
Yeah.
want to be in that situation.
No.
Anyway,
So do you think trust is important and being truthful?
trust is so important, so important.
Mm.
And I guess from my experience, it really is. And I think when I met George, who is also a sex worker, for me, it's just been very clear from the start. Like, we're so open with each other about what we do. And because I work in the death space as well,
Yeah.
where people find it difficult to talk about that, or
Yeah.
when I talk about it, they feel uncomfortable. And
Oh, do they?
sometimes I have to kind of really check myself sometimes, especially people of an older generation, if I'm joking about something. But with George as well, like, talking about sex and talking about sex work can be
Yeah.
uncomfortable for people too. So we kind of really we really connected on that level of being somebody. We're both people who are quite
Risque.
yeah, or just
Supposedly, like the
supposedly
taboo
a
subjects.
taboo. Yeah, and but also we're both very open about what we do and what we talk about, and I just found that so refreshing. So from the very start, we're 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 kind of a good match because we have total trust with each other. We got to a point, we've been seeing each other for nearly a year now, and there was a point a few months ago where George had said to me, do you think we need to have a check-in about our relationship? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I've never done this before. And he's like, well, I have an agenda. I can
Oh,
whip up an agenda of things for us to talk about. I've done this before because he's had relationships with people before,
yeah.
um, you know, and romantic relationships, not work relationships. And so we had a Zoom call and we went through this agenda of all the questions about how do you feel about the current situation? Is there anything you're not talking about? Is there anything that makes you uncomfortable? Where do you see this happening? Where do you see this going in the future? All these kind of questions that we were asking each other, and it
Right.
was so great. I loved it.
So
I
what
just
do you think
loved it.
about that when somebody asks about your future, like in that relationship?
I'm taking each day as it goes.
Mm.
I'm quite happy with he has other relationships as well as his escort work, which I'm quite happy for him to have. For myself, it's harder for me to meet people because I live in a small
Mm.
country town and I don't get to the cities as often, whereas he travels a lot.
Mm.
So he's just constantly meeting people. So there has been a little bit of like where I had to check myself was I'm not jealous of these other women
Mm.
because he's a cis het man too. And in this relationship, we are a heterosexual couple, if you call us a couple. But I had to kind of check myself about what I was feeling a little bit jealous. And I wasn't jealous of the other women in his life. I was more jealous of the
The
fact that he gets
lifestyle.
to have more fun than me. So, so he was feeling like he was holding back telling me about other women
Mm.
he was seeing or fun things that he'd done with these other people in his life. And so now, and neither of us want to be in that situation where it's a don't ask, don't tell kind of
No.
situation. Like, we both decided we didn't want, like, I'm sure that's fine for other people in similar situations, but for us, it was like, it's all about that trust and that openness and to be completely honest with each other without gory details. But
Yeah, of course.
it's all part of that same thing. So in the future, I kind of, we see each other once a month and it works quite well. The only time I've kind of thought about it might be difficult is if one of us gets sick. how do we feel about that? And what are we going to do about that? We
Mm,
might not be able to travel to see each other.
mm.
And it's just so out of our control that let's just deal with it when it happens.
And
And
so
for the,
on.
mm,
Oh, sorry. Yeah, keep going.
I was just going to say, so for the moment, I think I just feel like, well, let's let's just see how this goes. Like we're both
Yeah.
enjoying each other's company. We both love being together. It's like, yeah. And I think from my death work and everything that I've been through, I keep saying to people, life's short, just enjoy
Yes.
yourself. And it's like, I really need to take that on for myself. And I think I have over the last particularly, 10 years or so. Like,
Mm.
yes, like just do it if you really want to do it. If it's enjoyable, you're not hurting anyone, and you're
Mm.
completely honest, then just go for it. Like just do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm, mm,
Yeah, I was just thinking about when you said if you got sick or something. So have you thought about like if you die, like,
mm,
like that, um, I don't know, like planning for that.
mhm.
Like, yeah, both my parents talked about their death and they, said, here's a book, write down the things you want from
Yep,
us.
yep.
And my dad had a list of the music he wanted played at his
Yep.
funeral.
Yep. Great.
Um, and yeah, my mum's requests, and oh yeah, and my dad was he was a milkman when he was younger, so he said he wanted a horse and cart because he
Oh
had a
wow.
horse and cart. He had a horse called Cedric, and he'd take the milk and do the rounds, and then when he'd finished the rounds, he'd fall asleep, and the horse would take him home. And so we did that. We had a horse and cart with his coffin on it and a crate of milk.
Oh wow. That's
Yeah,
so
and
beautiful.
and so this is like that remembrance that you talk about,
Mm.
like honoring the people that have gone. And so have you got some grand idea about yours?
It changes all the time.
Oh,
That's the
does it? Yeah, because you'll
problem.
probably get all this information about all these new ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And, I think it's important to have an advanced care directive that has
Yes.
all the information in it about what you want and what you don't want. If you
Yeah.
get hit by a bus and you end up on life support. And also in that document is like, are there any important people that we need to contact? And so George would be he is one of those people um, that needs to be contacted. Um, but yeah, also with those advanced care directives, you need to revisit them because
Mm.
for me, yeah, it changes all the time. So I kind of go back and look at it and think, oh, am I still thinking that? I mean, the crux of it is that no, I don't want to be on life support. If I can't feed myself and I can't enjoy life, and I don't want to be in this situation, so pull the plug. Like that kind of information remains the same because that's an ethical standpoint of
Yes.
body autonomy. But
Yeah,
things like,
my
yeah.
mum was a nurse and in casualty and stuff, and she would see people on
Mm.
life support, and she had tattooed on her chest not for resuscitation.
Yeah, yeah.
But the doctor said we can't really abide by that because we have
No.
code of ethics. But like when we did that thing, yeah, she kind of suggested what she wanted is that, but I don't know.
Mm. Yeah, it's
It's
yeah.
a fine line there, isn't there?
Yeah, yeah. And also, like when I talk to people about what they want for their funerals or an end of
Yeah.
life, I'm like, always have a plan B because you might want
Mm.
your family to wash and dress you when you die and a natural burial
Mm.
and no embalming and everything. But are you sure your family are up to that? Like
Yeah.
they
I
might.
I think that's quite confronting actually to
Mm,
wash someone's body.
yep, yep, and yeah, like they even though they say they are now, like you need to put little things in place to make it easier for them because you're not around, to
Mm.
talk them into it or direct them. So that's where death doulas are really great people
Mm.
to come in to help the family. But also, he might be decapitated or, just the
Oh
most
yeah.
horrible traumatic death you might have. And there might be somebody culturally or culturally in your family, they might prefer to have an open casket
Mm.
to see the body. And if you want a natural burial and no viewing
Well,
or
yeah, the open caskets, that when they prepare their bodies to do that, it's actually quite unenvironmentally friendly because
yes.
they take out a lot of fluids. People don't know this, but they take
Mm.
out a lot of stuff which gets
Yeah.
thrown down the drain, I suppose. I don't
Yeah.
know, or that gets put somewhere.
Yeah, and it's nasty chemicals. And
And then, yeah, lots of chemicals putting it back
yeah,
in.
thankfully in Australia, they generally only embalm the face and the
Oh,
hands if
okay.
it's going to be an open casket,
Okay.
open viewing. But and they don't, well, some funeral homes will just do it, but majority of them will ask the family if that's something they want done. And you're quite, in your rights to say no. In America, they just embalm the whole body. Like that is
Oh,
a normal thing that happens if somebody dies, whether you have an open casket or not. Like,
oh, really?
yeah, and
Gosh,
it's a huge expense as well as
yeah.
and not environmentally friendly. Yeah.
No.
But in Australia, yeah, if they embalm, it's usually just for the viewing and it's face and hands and the makeup and everything. I mean, you'll still get morticians who will do makeup,
Yeah.
particularly if you have like an, a shrouded burial or cremation just before you get completely wrapped up. They might, you know, get family to help wrap the body or whatever. So you'll see the person's face, but
So
yeah,
in that
it's
situation, they don't do any of the embalming. They just, you're natural as you are, wrapped up.
yep. And so also, I mean, family has to be prepared for that
Yeah,
because
because that looks different.
yeah, completely. You look dead. You look
Mm.
withdrawn, depending on how you've died. If you've died in the hospital after a long illness, you know, there's all sorts of things that happen to the body when you die, like your mouth will
Yeah.
open, so your mouth has to be closed up, eyes are open, and you have,
And your soul's gone, so you aren't the same.
yeah, that's right. That's
As soon
right.
as you see them, you go, they don't look like anything like.
Yeah, but
It's because the soul makes you who you are.
yeah, and I think, we don't see dead bodies, so we don't know what they're
No.
supposed to look like. And death is death, and you look completely different. Having a death doula come to your family and walk you through that process, it can be so cathartic for so many people to see, especially if somebody is dying and then goes through the process of death and their last breath and then they're
Mm.
dead. Like it's a closure. And to some families really get a lot out of that process of preparing a body when somebody's died. And I think, that a lot of people will freak out when somebody dies and call a funeral home straight away or call the nurse or somebody who's a professional. And like I think a lot of people regret that later on because as soon as the body leaves and goes off to the mortuary or the funeral home takes it or the hospital decides to take the body away, family members who haven't arrived and wanted to see the person, like it's often really hard to be able to see that person once they've been taken away.
Mm.
So to have the time, like I say to people, just if somebody dies in front of you, if you're in the hospital or at home, just take a moment and make a cup of
Yes.
tea. Don't panic. Like this
Yeah.
is what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And so just try and remain calm and relaxed and spend that time with the person, your person who's died, and really, this is the last chance you have to be with this person. Make a cup of tea, maybe call a friend or another relative or
Mm.
whoever, and get them to come over. But don't call a funeral director, don't call an ambulance, don't call
No.
the professionals, because yeah, once they're there,
That,
they're there.
the wheels start getting in motion.
Mm, mm.
Mm.
And yeah, I think people really value that time, whether it's really it can be really confronting too. And yeah, some people choose not to do that. That's fair enough.
Mm.
But yes, I mean, some people think, I mean, in Victoria, we can have a body at home for as long as we like before,
Is that
you know.
right?
In New South Wales, it's 5 days max. I think
Okay.
people find that 3 days is probably enough. You
Mm.
know, there's ways to slow down the decomposition too of a body, particularly if it's in the middle of summer. You know, like you can get cooling plates to put under
Okay.
people's bodies to that are freezing, and that will slow down the decomposition because, of course, bodies change. Yeah,
Mm.
so you can spend time. It's okay to have somebody dead in the house
Mm.
if you're okay with it,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
you
not
know.
sure I'd be doing that, but
Well, yeah, I often think about, when my mum died at home, she was in a hospital bed downstairs. So
Mm.
she wasn't in her own bed.
Oh yeah.
And I kind of think, yeah, that's probably the way I would like to do it, because imagine going back to sleep in that bed, especially to start with, if you were somebody's partner, or it would be very strange. Mm.
Oh yeah. True.
That's where a death doula comes in again. It's like, well, they know
Mm.
what to do, in those kind of situations. And
What is classified as a death doula?
de
What is
well,
their role?
yeah, death doulas can be anything. Like they can come in at any point. So when somebody's dying, they can come in and help the family navigate that role and the person who's dying, that process, I should say. Um, but really, yeah, so they can be brought in anytime. So when somebody dies as well, rather than calling a funeral director, you might call your death doula that you've already talked to or haven't, and said, "Oh, can you come and help us help dress the body? Um, just be with us and help us through this process and prepare the body for burial or cremation." So death doulas are really good at doing everything from like delegating people to make cups of tea to showing somebody how to wash a body. And then they usually will have an association with the funeral director too. So like me, so I know a bunch of doulas in Central Victoria that I'll be working with, and um, so they'll call me and I'll call them, kind of thing, and we all work together.
Oh wow.
Mm.
That's interesting what you said, washing the body. Is that something that people like to do?
Yeah, I think especially if families are comfortable with somebody dying at home, then that might be something that they consider, and preparing the body before it gets taken away. I mean, it's something that happened in communities and in families like years ago. People used to just naturally do that, or there was somebody in the community that they would call who would come and do that. But as that kind of role got taken over by funeral homes, the professionals.
Oh, yes.
Even if you die in an aged care facility or in a hospice or in a hospital, a family sometimes will get involved with washing the body and preparing the body with nurses, or
Okay.
if the death doula comes to them there.
Interesting. Is it a cultural thing?
Yeah, I guess, well, there's particular people who do it in the Islamic faith.
Okay.
So women will wash and dress women, and men will wash and dress men. And they have to do it, and also in Jewish tradition too, it needs to be done within 24 hours. So
Mm.
they do have somebody in the community that does that work.
Right.
But with the death doula in Western culture, I guess it comes from Ireland and those kind of traditions that were very hands-on, where bodies were, laid out. Bodies still are laid out on kitchen tables, or maybe in Italy, or um, yeah. So it's a kind of a traditional thing in Western culture as well, but that's been taken away. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Asians have something where they keep the body for 3 days or something like that. Is
Yeah,
it?
it's different in different countries. And
Mm.
it depends whether they have a Catholic um, faith as well, like what happens. It can be, yeah, very different in different cultures. There's, in Indonesia, in Java, there's a tradition where you dig up the body every 3 years and redress and rewash the body and spend time with the body and then lay the body to rest again.
Is it true though, that they're a skeleton in 1 year?
Oh, it depends on the soil and if they're
Oh.
embalmed. So that Tarago, I think they're called Taraja. I can't remember the name of the group of people in Java who dig up their families again, but they're embalmed. So
Yes.
it used to be a traditional more organic kind of type of embalming traditionally, but now they use the really evil kind of formaldehyde chemicals because
Uh,
it's a lot less effort to go and buy those embalming fluids than actually sourcing. Well, I don't know, like maybe the natural plants aren't available anymore, or
mm,
yeah, but they still hold on to that tradition. Yeah, there's a few really great people who do a lot of research in those cultural rituals. Um, yeah, I have a friend, Dallas Black, and she travels around she's a photographer and she takes photographs of those kind of rituals in Japan and Thailand and
wow.
Indonesia. And yeah, it's so interesting. And I don't really have a background in the thanatology kind of
Yeah.
area, in that kind of different cultural areas. But yeah, it's fascinating.
Mm, yeah. It's interesting you said about the photography. I was thinking of, I don't know if you've seen that movie, The Others. They have a Book of the Dead. Have you
Mm.
seen those?
Mm. Like the Tibetan Book of the Dead.
No, they're Western people,
Oh, I
and
can't.
they're actually like in their like say in their bed, so that when they've died, and that I think that they may sort of stage it a bit, like they may set it up, and then
Mm.
they have photos of them, and they're all. And I think some of them have their eyes open. I'm not sure, but yeah, they're all dead,
Mm.
and yeah, it's Nicole Kidman.
Oh, I don't think I've seen it.
Oh,
Ooh,
you might have to see
one
it.
down. I love it.
Oh, I actually did have a question about somebody was saying like what, like leaving a legacy and and to like have that feeling that who you're going to be remembered by.
Mm.
And because her sister's yeah, she's got cancer. And so she's talking about that, and somebody said to her that they can write her life story, like a memoir or something. And yeah, so like yeah, like it's sort of, to me, this is probably the most important thing about death and of our loved ones, is that the meaning that we put on it.
Mm.
And it's obviously for the people left behind,
Mm.
but is it important that we express that to our loved ones while we're alive, what that is about, or is it everybody's interpretation, like art? Because how grief is so individual, and it's something that has no time frame, and it's just like what happens, and you should give yourself that space to be whatever? Or are we guided by the people that might be dying?
I guess it's so individual, really, about how you feel about your death and how you feel about history as well. And
Oh, yeah, true. Because you may
um,
not care about the history of things. Mm.
yeah, and uh, there's a bit of there's a bit of I mean, there's a lot of work in this space in the digital realm, like
Mm.
how to carry on somebody's name forever. You know, whether it be a QR code on a tombstone or
Yeah, right.
yeah, just different ways, like, turning Facebook pages into memorial pages when somebody dies. How
What do
long
you
do
think of
you?
that?
I like it, I think, to start with when people are grieving and
Mm.
they want to go through old photos that they were in together, or also a space where people can, once a year write something on that Facebook page saying, I
Oh,
miss you,
yes.
and that kind of prompts other people to think about it. I think it's a really lovely space for people to come together as a collective, to social media in general, to grieve. Um, but yeah, it's it's an interesting concept. Like, I mean, there's things like the the idea of cryonics, like being frozen and then in the future
It is
sometime
kind of
being
bizarre, though.
reanimated.
Yeah.
Yeah. We
Yeah,
have a
because there was,
facility in Australia now that does.
yeah, yeah, there
Yeah.
was a show. We were watching a show, and they said, like they were giving this money to this person who says, like I've done it for other people.
Mm.
I There's no, like they hadn't actually unfrozen them or whatever, and they've come back. So like, there's no guarantee, and like, how would
Ethically,
you
it's the
how would you
mind blowing.
know?
Yeah, and like, who cares?
And
Where's
50
the
years
duty?
from time, you're not going to know anybody anyway.
No, I
So what
know.
point would it be?
I know who the duty of care is really interesting in this situation, because who looks after these people?
That's
And
right.
what happens if we have no sun in 100 years and there's no power, keeping these facilities going? What happens to those bodies that unfreeze, or, you know, and they don't even know if they can do it. Like, people are paying
Mm.
thousands and thousands, 20 grand or whatever, or even more,
Yeah.
to for a process that isn't tested. And yeah, like, there's a dude in Holbrook in New South Wales who's built his own facility, and he's got
Yeah.
people, generally it's old white men who
And
have bought
and
into.
like ideally, really would be better if you were like 20 years old, but they're not going to do that for a 20-year-old.
Who's got the
So you're
money?
going to come back as an old white man.
I know.
Like
I know.
what good is that?
What use are you going to be? Yeah. Um,
Exactly.
but yeah, it's that idea
It's
of
ego or something. Like
yeah,
I'm so
like,
good.
yeah, yeah. It's like,
Like
who
people are going to just want to have me around,
it's
even
bizarre.
I was from another century.
Yeah, like, I mean, yeah, I don't know what's going on in people's heads with
Because
that.
like also would that mean that they don't have they might have the brain, but will the brain be activated and have the memories?
Well, nobody
See?
knows.
No,
Yeah,
you don't know that. It could be
no,
just a brain that it goes back to a child. I don't know.
sludge.
Yeah.
Who knows? I know. It just, yeah, it's really astounding that, yeah, people feel the need. Like, I don't think that's about legacy, is it? Because there's no legacy to leave for people that you
No.
know. Like, yeah, because it's not going to happen in the very near future that you've reanimated. It's like, who knows? I'm not sure. Although, like, I just read something on my radio show today about a composer, um, who's some of his who died, and some of his brain cells are still alive and creating music. Like, it's in a gallery in Perth.
Oh yeah, I couldn't quite grasp that.
Yeah, like, that's just kooky as
Yes.
like
Yeah.
that's kind of really interesting, like using your
Mm.
bodily remains to keep going. Like that's a kind of a legacy. Like it's a legacy for music, his work. His daughter was talking about how she thought it was great. He talked to the artist before he died about it too. So
Mm.
they're continuing his legacy as an instrumental person um, in avant-garde music. So yeah, there's so many different ways you can think about how what you will leave, and there's that concept of the three deaths um, as well, where the first death is when you physically die.
Yeah.
The second one is when your soul leaves your body, like you are buried and gone or cremated, or like you have disappeared completely, however you decide to dispose of your body. And then the third is when your name is said for the last time. And that's the third death. And it's
Oh,
like,
when does
yeah,
that happen?
well, it can happen. Well, there's billions of people in history whose names we don't say anymore, who are completely
Oh, yeah.
forgotten.
I
So
think that would take a long time.
yeah, yeah,
Lots of
yeah.
generations.
Or it depends if you've had a street named after you or not.
Yeah, true. Interesting. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of like that idea as an esoteric kind of thing. It's like, oh, yeah. Especially with lineage of family, or, like I'm the only sibling in my family who's had a child. And
Oh,
and she doesn't even have my last name. So I am
yeah.
and my sister who's still alive and my brother who's still alive changed their names.
Oh,
So I'm the last West, and West is actually a new last name because it got changed when my Yenish ancestors went west. So, and it
oh,
was easier
wow.
to spell than their
Yeah.
real, their first last name. But
Interesting.
yeah, so I'm the last West that exists in my
Mm.
family. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also some of the families, you say they won't say your name, but some families would do alternate. So if your name was John, then the next one would be something else, Arthur or something, and then the next one would be John, and the next one would be Arthur, and the next one would be
Mm.
John, and that went on. Like in my mum's side, they've got who have they got? Thomas, and they married Janes. It was like all these Thomases and Janes. I'm going, get original, like even the men married all Janes. How bizarre is that?
Oh no, it's funny. Yeah, well, names come in and out of fashion too.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Mm. I did have another question about like power of attorney and like if people aren't following, your wishes or something. Like how does that gets messy, doesn't it?
Oh, so many families go through messiness.
Mm.
Um,
And does that come down to money? Usually
yeah, a lot of the
that sort of
time.
stuff.
Yeah, a lot of the time it'll be what people feel entitled to, I
Mm.
guess. I've been to a few funerals where people have gotten up and aired their grievances at the
Have
funeral.
they? Wow.
Yeah, and it's been really uncomfortable
I
in a
bet.
public. I think they've tried to do it in a private setting, and their
Been
message hasn't come
resolved.
across, so they've decided to do it at the funeral, which has been, trying to see the MC or the funeral celebrant try and usher people off the.
Yeah.
Oh no,
Oh boy.
terrible,
Wow.
really terrible.
Maybe that's what I can ban at mine. Whatever
Yeah.
happens, do not do that.
Well, there's a fantastic guy. What's his name? Bill, is it? I can't remember. He's known as the Coffin Confessor.
Oh yeah, who wrote the book?
Yes, Bill
Yes.
Edgar. I think is his name.
Yes. Yeah,
He, yeah,
my partner's read that book. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, you pay him $10,000 and he will come to your funeral and say what you want him to say.
Yeah, that you couldn't say before.
Yes, yes, and
I
lots of
don't
things.
have any problem with that. I say it all
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
Whether
Well,
people can take it or not.
yeah. I actually love the idea of like doing a video eulogy
Oh,
for
yes.
yourself, because
Yeah.
I saw online, I can't remember who it was. I wish I saved it. It was like video footage, like a normal video footage of the funeral taking place, and there was a big screen up the front, and then the lights went down, and all of a sudden, this dude kind of like popped up and went, "Hi, everyone. I'm not actually here. I'm dead."
If you're watching this, I've died.
Everybody was in shock. Like nobody was ready for that. But it was
Oh,
so funny. I just thought it was so funny. And I've seen funerals where um, dancers have come out, like,
yeah.
and flash mobs have appeared out of the
Yeah.
walls, and just so many great ideas.
Yes, I've seen that too. And I thought, wow, that's exactly what I want.
Yes, yeah. But yeah, powers of attorney and wills and anything that revolves around money or some
Mm,
finance kind of thing. I think that's where it gets problematic. And if people that don't have wills as well, then
true.
assets have to go through probate, and that can get
Mm,
really messy. Oh, ex-partners, who believe that they should be entitled to part of an estate, or yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not involved in all the legal kind of stuff, but I've
yeah.
certainly been around people with those problems and heard stories of terrible things that have happened. Yeah.
And I suppose that's a form of grief too, if you're expecting to have some money to live off or something, if it's your partner. Like I know somebody who in this town who an older person whose husband died and everything was in his name. And so she had no access to the bank account.
Oh, yes. And
And
banks
and they
can
said,
be,
I'm sorry, you can't, you have to wait
mm,
until I think probate or whatever it
yes,
was. But
that can take
and so she
months.
had nothing to live on.
Ugh. I know that's where people need to talk to each other, like
Mm,
about death and about what's going to happen when somebody dies, whether it's by surprise or it's a long dying process. Like so many people, particularly in the older age bracket where you
yeah.
might not talk to each other about it. Yeah, it's so important. I think people don't realize how difficult it is for their partner, and you've been living with each other for 50, 60 years
Mm,
and never talked about it.
mm.
Like, I don't think people realize how difficult it's going to be if one dies before the other. Yep.
The five stages of death. But
Oh, yeah. Well,
do you follow any of that, or is that sort of something that's not really talked about these days? Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's work.
yeah, I think some people refer to it still. And yeah, the two extra parts that have been added onto the end. I think it was groundbreaking when it first came out. The fact that it was acknowledged that you go through these different processes, but
Mm.
then I think it became a formulaic kind
Yeah,
of process where people thought if they
you had to
hadn't
go.
experienced all those things, there's something
Yes,
wrong with them.
yes, yeah. Yeah,
I
well, it
think,
was a
yeah,
thing of her era. Like she was born the
yeah,
same year as my dad. Yeah,
mm.
that
Yeah,
was a
it was
hundred years
pretty.
ago.
Yeah, I mean it was pretty out there
Mm.
when it was revealed when she wrote about it, but I think a lot of people got a
And
lot out of
the loss of her, like they said she was a triplet, and then one of
it.
them died, and then they didn't acknowledge her or something for many years. So,
Oh,
yes,
interesting. Yeah, well
yeah.
that's of a time too, isn't it?
Mm,
Instead of getting through it and
mm,
getting to the end like a Kubler-Ross kind of model, original
right.
model, the grief is always with you. And it's kind
Yes.
of, there's a great diagram where it's this circle, and the grief is this messy thing in the middle. And then there's another circle around the outside. And that just grows and expands and contracts in different parts of your life. It's like grief is always there. It's just what's working around it that changes. Like you
Mm.
might acknowledge it when things are going bad and you're just getting closer to that grief. And then other times you're just living your life and you're just like it's far away from what's happening around you. And like, but it just kind of comes in and out and it's always there. I like that kind of idea.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's probably a good thing to, think about, how we impact others in our lives too, because that's what it's about. It's the impact that that person that's gone has left. And yeah, like I'm always trying to find meaning in things, so
Yeah, right.
connections and meaning.
Yeah, I'm the opposite, I reckon. I'm just like
Oh,
I'm just so pragmatic about everything.
yeah, right.
Like, you die, you leave.
Okay, yeah.
Whoever's
Yeah.
left copes with it. You're going to die next, so
Yeah, so
just
yeah,
get
that's
on
an
with it.
interesting it's an interesting flip from, not celebrating deaths and having so many, and then now you're in this realm of,
Mm.
helping people deal with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's why I don't think being a death doula is my calling because I think to be that kind of person that works with families in that very visceral dying and death time,
Yeah.
I think I'm better at being the person that comes in and does the practical stuff. Like
Right. Yes.
you know, like I,
Yeah, I get you. Yeah.
yeah, like I can't be that person that's available 24/7 for emotional support.
Mm,
I
mm,
think, and that's just because of the person I am and have become and because of my life experience. So I
mm,
think I'm really useful in being a bit more black and white about what needs to be done. And
mm.
then there's other people that can cater to people's different spiritual needs. I'm also like a type of person that can bring people together and find the right people. And I think that's part of my power is that I network quite well in the deathy world and I'm always open to learning and hearing about it. And that's something I learned very early on actually is not to um, disrespect anyone for their religious beliefs and to
Yes.
be open to their needs and what they believe, even if I don't.
True.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So what's some closing wisdom that you'd like to, maybe some, I don't know, pointers or something that you'd like to say for people that might be experiencing some form of grief?
Oh, I think not to give yourself a hard time about doing nothing. Like
Oh,
there's been
yes.
times in my life where I've had to spend days just doing nothing
Yes.
and
I
just
totally agree with that.
just existing. Like
Mm.
just making sure you eat something. Like,
Yeah.
that's as far as you get. Like some days, just doing a load of washing is a big feat. So I think it's really good to not give yourself a hard time. And, and grief is part of that. Yeah, and I mean it can last for if sure, if it's lasting a really long time, then you need to probably do something about it, or at least talk to somebody. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that would be my main takeaway because I'm somebody who kind of is always feeling a bit guilty that I'm not giving things 100% or I say yes to everything and
Oh,
then I
yes. Yes.
can't come through with the goods. I feel really guilty and then I have like
That
this
would,
big come down and it's like,
mm,
oh God,
that
just
would
burnout.
be very hard for, yeah, a lot of women are people pleasers, and so they're used to saying yes to lots of things, and then if they're in that situation, they, yeah.
Yeah, and I think because yeah, I am quite an independent person and I rely on myself a lot. Um, yeah, and I find it
Oh,
hard
yeah, so
to
you
ask
don't
for
want to
help.
ask for help.
Yeah, so I think, come day two or something where I'm like doing exactly nothing that I the same as what I did the day before, I have to remind myself it's okay. You
Yeah.
can stop. And, I might just text a friend and say, oh, I'm feeling blurg.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's okay just to be like that.
Yeah. And is it important to have community?
Oh, it's so important.
Yeah.
For
To
me,
have a
though,
network around that cares about you.
yeah, I think so. I think because I've been at both ends as well, where I've been in a place with close to zero community and then now finding it again. It's
Mm.
I know for myself personally, it's really important. But I have friends in Melbourne that I've had for many, many years who are just working and doing their thing and don't go out much or, you know, have friends, but
Mm.
don't need that bigger framework to live in. Whereas I think small town kind of community really suits me well because I feel
Yeah.
like I can connect with a whole bunch of people, and that's pretty much just about my personality too. But also, yeah, in the deathy world as well, like I know that I have, as an independent death worker, like
Mm.
I need to have people that I can talk to about what I'm doing. Like I still kind of in that mindset of I'll just work this out myself, but that's just because of my life experience.
Yeah,
And
true.
but as soon as I get groups of people together, like when we were hand weaving the coffin, and I brought people in to help finish that off, it was like, oh yeah, this is really nice. It's really
Experience,
nice.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think having the radio show as well,
Oh
and
yeah.
people like stopping me on the street and saying, I listened to your show the other day and
Mm.
this what you were talking about was amazing, or like I know somebody that'll get a lot out of that. Like being able to kind of reach just one person
Mm.
who gives me feedback or doesn't give me feedback at all, but knowing that I'm kind of just somebody's tuning in randomly on Main FM and hearing me talk about something to do with death, and they take that away and they tell one other person, and then that person tells
Yeah.
another person. It's like that's the beauty of being a death literacy advocate, is that, and an artist too, a socially engaged artist, is that your word may only reach one person, but
Mm.
that information keeps going, and it means that people are talking to someone about death or reaching out to somebody else, like even if it's on a very small scale. It's
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah,
and so
well,
that's
it was
thought.
our first contact. I heard you on the radio,
Yeah,
and it was the day after my mum had died. And
yeah, wow.
I had that, very visceral experience where she came and came in through me and through my heart and
Mm.
radiated all this love. And it was while you were playing Nick Cave's Into My Arms. And so I
Oh,
actually made sure I had that at her funeral.
yeah,
And
wow. That's
because
beautiful.
she was in a town, Hamilton, and that's where his father was. So she knew
Oh,
his
wow.
father. So there was that connection. And yeah, and then I got you to play the song that she liked too. And yeah, so that was really beautiful. And then you had the postpartum exhibition.
Oh, yes.
That
Yeah.
was amazing. Yeah, that was like in that
Yeah.
whole month. And I was so nurtured. I thought, yes, this is all that I need.
Isn't that fantastic? And like sometimes you do kind of think, wow, there's a reason that this has
Yeah,
happened for me at this time. Like
yeah,
I do, even though I'm not into a
yeah.
spiritual way of thinking, every now and again I do think, wow, there's a reason I met
Synchronicity.
this person, or there's a reason I heard this, or yeah, the
Mm,
synchronicity of it. And yeah, I think as you get older too, I think you kind of like
yes.
to feel those feelings and to pick up on those little signals because you're like,
Mm,
yeah, I want to embrace that now. Like, yeah, that's meaningful. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
so where can people reach you? And so they can
Um,
listen to your show on Main FM
mhm.
94.9 on Mondays.
Mondays 10 till 11, Australian Eastern Standard Time.
Yes.
And then I've got my website, thedeparture.com.au. I've got Instagram at the.departure.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I've just separated my websites. So my art practice is on hayleywest.com.au if people are interested in art practice. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.